A Love, Loyalty, and Reality, Understanding Alden Richards, Maine Mendoza, and the Man Beside Her, Arjo Ataide. In the world of showbiz, few love stories have captured hearts quite like that of Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza. Their chemistry sparked a movement, built a massive fan base, and created a cultural phenomenon that still echoes today. But time has moved forward, and while many fans continue to hold on to what once was or what they believe could still be, the reality has taken a different path. At the center of that reality stands another important figure, Maine Mendoza's husband, Arjo Ataide. This is where the story becomes more complex and more real. A love story that changed everything. When Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza first rose to fame together, their connection felt undeniable. Fans saw something rare, something that blurred the line between scripted romance and genuine emotion. Their partnership wasn't just entertainment, it became a symbol of hope, destiny, and the idea that two people could find each other in the most unexpected way. For many, it didn't feel like acting, it felt real. And that belief has never fully faded. Enter reality. Maine Mendoza's marriage fries. As the years passed, life unfolded beyond the screen. Maine Mendoza found love in a different direction, one that led her to Arjo Ataide. Their relationship, built away from the intense spotlight of a love team, grew steadily and sincerely. Eventually, that love turned into commitment, marriage, a new chapter. For Maine, this wasn't just another headline, it was a personal decision, a step into a future grounded in reality rather than speculation. The position of Arjo Ataide, being the husband of someone as widely adored as Maine Mendoza, comes with its own unique challenges, especially when her past on-screen partner remains deeply connected to her public image. Arjo Ataide represents something important in this story: stability. He is not part of a fantasy. He is not a what if. He is the present. And while comparisons and discussions may continue among fans, his role is not to compete with the past, but to build a future with Maine based on trust, respect, and real-life commitment. Where does that leave Alden? For Alden Richards, the situation is equally significant, but in a different way. He remains a central figure in the story that fans refuse to let go of. His connection with Maine continues to be remembered, celebrated, and analyzed, but reality requires acceptance. No matter how strong their past connection may have been, the present tells a different story, and navigating that reality with grace is what defines true character. Alden's respect for Maine's current life speaks volumes, not through grand statements, but through quiet dignity. Caught between then and now. Perhaps the most emotionally invested part of this story is the fans. They were there from the beginning. They felt every moment. They believed in every possibility. For them, the idea of Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza has never been just a memory. It's a feeling that continues to live on. But this is where reality becomes important. Supporting Maine also means respecting her choices. Believing in her happiness means accepting the life she has chosen. With Arjo Ataide. Not all love stories end the way people expect. Some become lifelong partnerships. Others become meaningful chapters that shape who we are. The connection between Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza may not have turned into marriage, but that doesn't make it any less important. It simply means it served a different purpose, a purpose that brought joy, inspiration, and unforgettable moments to millions. Moving forward with respect. At the heart of this story are three people: a man who shared an unforgettable journey with Maine, a woman who chose her own path forward, and a husband who now stands beside her in real life. Each of them deserves respect, not comparison. Alden Richards for the role he played in a story that meant so much. Maine Mendoza for choosing her own happiness. Arjo Ataide for being part of her present and future. Final thoughts. Some stories are meant to stay as they are, beautiful, powerful, but ultimately part of the past. Others continue to grow in new directions. The story of Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza will always hold a special place in the hearts of many. But real love, the kind that exists beyond screens and speculation, is the one that is lived every day. And today, that reality belongs to Maine Mendoza and Arjo Ataide. As for Alden, his story is still being written, and perhaps somewhere ahead, a new chapter, just as meaningful, just as real, is waiting for him too. The quiet strength behind acceptance. What makes this story even more compelling is not just the love that once existed, but the maturity that followed. For Alden Richards, choosing silence, respect, and distance at the right moments shows a different kind of strength, one that doesn't need to prove anything to the public. Because sometimes the hardest thing to do is to accept reality without trying to rewrite it. And in doing so, he preserves the dignity of what they once had with Maine Mendoza. No drama, no conflict, just quiet understanding. That in itself speaks volumes. Maine's life beyond the spotlight. For Maine Mendoza, life has clearly moved into a new phase, one that is no longer centered around public speculation, but around personal fulfillment. Her relationship with Arjo Ataide represents something grounded, something chosen not by fans, not by scripts, but by her own heart. And that distinction matters, because while the world may have watched her fall in love on screen, her real life choices were made away from the noise, quietly, intentionally, and sincerely. Marriage, after all, is not built on moments. It's built on consistency. Arjo Ataide, the man in the present. It's easy for people to overlook what Arjo Ataide represents in this narrative. He is not part of the fantasy that once captivated millions, but he is part of the reality that exists today. And that role requires a certain level of confidence and understanding. To stand beside someone whose past connection is still celebrated publicly, to embrace a relationship that will always be compared, to remain steady despite the noise, that takes strength. Arjo's presence in Maine's life is not about replacing anyone. It's about building something entirely his own with her. The emotional tug of war among fans. For many supporters, this situation creates a quiet conflict. On one hand, there's loyalty to the past, the undeniable magic between Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza. On the other hand, there's the reality of the present, Maine's marriage to Arjo Ataide. Letting go of a story that once felt so real isn't easy, because it wasn't just entertainment, it was emotional investment. But growth often requires acceptance, not forgetting the past, but understanding that it doesn't define the future. What if things had been different? It's a question that lingers in many minds. What if the timing had aligned? What if things had unfolded differently? Would Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza have ended up together? Maybe. Or maybe their story was always meant to be exactly what it was, a moment in time that brought joy, connection, and meaning, without needing a traditional ending. Not all powerful stories are meant to last forever. Some are meant to change lives and then let go. Respecting all sides of the story. At this point, the most important thing isn't choosing sides, it's understanding all perspectives. Alden Richards deserves recognition for the impact he made and the way he has handled everything with grace. Maine Mendoza deserves the freedom to live her life without being held back by expectations. Argo Atede deserves respect as the man who stands beside her today. Because in the end, this is not a competition. It's a story of different chapters, different choices, and different kinds of love. A story that will never be forgotten. Even as life moves forward, one thing remains certain. The story of Alden Richards and Maine Mendoza will never truly fade. It has become part of pop culture history, a reminder of a time when something felt incredibly real, even in the world of entertainment. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it doesn't need a dramatic conclusion or a final confession. Maybe its power lies in the fact that it touched so many lives and continues to do so. Final reflection. Life doesn't always follow the stories we imagine. Sometimes it writes its own version, one that is quieter, more grounded, but no less meaningful. Today, Maine Mendoza walks a path with Arjo Ataide, and Alden Richards continues his journey, carrying with him a story that changed everything. Three people, one unforgettable narrative, and a lesson that stays. Not all love is meant to stay, but all real love leaves a mark.